no sponsor. Journal, one of the beat reporters covering every single day down there at the NovaCare complex. Good morning, Martin. How you doing today?
Doing great. How's it going there?
Very good. I'm glad to have you on. I just want you to know that this is the first time you've been on my show in the morning here, but we really do appreciate all the hard work that you guys do every single day down there at practice covering this team.
Thanks. We all love training camp because we're allowed to see the entire practice and everything. And it's something like yesterday was the last open practice to the media. So we won't see this again probably until next spring with the OTAs. So, yeah, this is welcome for us. We love doing this.
I had a plan for what the show before you came on was going to be talking about. Then all we've been talking about for the first 15 minutes where us fans, us other people that don't have the access you guys have, we would actually pay if the Eagles started streaming these practices because we crave more football so much. We would actually literally pay if they would start streaming these practices online.
Yeah, it would be awesome. I mean, the Eagles are like a lot of teams will open up maybe like 10 or 12 practices to fans. I've seen as many as 10 or 12. The Eagles only do the one at the link, and they had over 50,000 people there the one night they did it. And fans love that stuff. They can sit in the stands, they can watch everything. They see the drills, they can hear Nick Sirianni yelling at the players, and you can kind of get a sense of the intensity and what they're working on, and lineups and all that. It's a shame they don't do it more. I mean, I think the Eagles do it like probably the least among all the NFL teams, but so.
All right. Well, you used the word intensity there, so let's just dive right into that. Yesterday was quite an intense last day of practice, against the Colts. Obviously, it's the topic everybody wants to talk about is the Derek Barnett situation and obviously the Jason Kelce situation with the fights and skirmishes or feistiness, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
From your perspective, both those situations, what happened? And, you get different perspectives from the Eagles reporters and then the Colts reporters online. What was your viewpoint on what happened in those two situations?
All right. Well, I'll start with the Derek Barnett situation. So basically, the way the practices are set up, the Colts offense is going against the Eagles defense on one field, and then on the field right next to it, the Eagles offense is going against the Colts defense. So, and it's the ones against the ones, the twos against the twos. So Anthony Richardson and the Colts offense was out there, and Jalen Carter was on one side, Derek Barnett was on the other, and they go in, and the quarterback's wearing a red jersey, so obviously he can't be hit. And so anytime you get close enough to a quarterback, they'll blow the whistle, blow the play dead. So the quarterback doesn't get hit. So on this particular play, like both Carter and Barnett from opposite sides converged at Anthony Richardson, and they stopped because obviously they're not going to hit the quarterback. But Barnett kind of like knocked the ball out of Richardson's hand, and a couple of the Colts offensive linemen started pushing him and stuff, and Barnett's kind of in the position like he's going to fight, and then Jalen Carter comes over and he kind of pushes a couple guys. And then there's kind of like a brief skirmish, but it's quickly broken up. So at the end of practice, like the last drill, everybody's on the one field. So first, the Eagles offense is up against the Colts defense, and then vice versa. So on this particular play, or on a couple plays, Kenny Gainwell took a short pass, and Zaire Franklin from the Colts hit him pretty hard. Now they're in pads, but they're not technically supposed to be tackling. You can bump a guy, but you can't really tackle to the ground. So Gainwell kind of takes exception, but doesn't really respond. So then on the very next play, it's the same thing, like a short dump off pass to Kenny Gainwell. He kind of gains a few yards, and then Franklin comes in again and hits him. And at this point, Kelce is seeing all this, and he and Franklin, I guess, were jawing during the practice before that anyway. So he comes running down and he hits Zaire Franklin in the back, and then the Colts are on one side and the Eagles on the other, everybody kind of runs in, kind of like a hockey fight. I mean, not a hockey fight, like a brawl in baseball. The bullpen's empty and everything like that. But in this case, you got like 150, 160 guys because nobody's made any cuts. So, they're all kind of like pushing, yelling, and stuff like that. I mean, there weren't really any punches thrown after that. And it just took a while to kind of get everybody back to each sideline and everything. But it was pretty intense. I mean, you could tell that Kelsey was upset. Zaire Franklin was upset. Kenny Gainwell was upset. And, afterwards, Kelsey's like, yeah, I kind of gave him a cheap shot. I shouldn't have done that. And he's right, because, if that happens in a game, chances are he gets thrown out. And then, all of a sudden the Eagles lose a game, maybe they should win, and all that has repercussions. And Kelsey's been in the league long enough to know better. And he kind of apologized for it. Zaire Franklin kind of like, I wish, he grew up in Philly as an Eagles fan, so he's watched Kelsey for years, and he's kind of like saying, I wish the OG would at least look at me before he hit me and stuff, because he kind of blindsided him. Kenny Gainwell thought it was great because he's sticking up for his teammate. And I think a lot of the Eagle players felt that way, that, Kelsey got their back and everything like that. So it was kind of important in that sense of the word. But I think also Kelsey realized that he went too far and probably shouldn't do that again.
With the fact that, none of these starters, play the preseason, none of the ones are playing tomorrow night.
Right.
And they haven't all season. Is it kind of, in your opinion, because this was something that a commenter brought up right before you joined the show, was that at least the intensity level got racketed up a little bit, even though Kelsey admitted he was wrong to an extent. Is it good, in your opinion, that they feel this high-end intensity before the regular season starts a little bit?
Oh, absolutely. I think, that's why they like doing the joint practices so much, because, if you're going against your own guys, it gets stale, especially like 3 weeks, 4 weeks in, like we are now. So, I mean, even last week, the two practices with the Browns, I mean, those were intense practices. There was some pushing and shoving there, nothing like yesterday, obviously, but you kind of get juiced a little bit going against another team, and everybody's trying really hard, because this is the work that the ones, especially, the starters get, more so than in a preseason game. And that's the thing about a preseason game. You don't want guys like Jalen Hurts or AJ Brown or Devontae Smith playing, because what if you're going against a third string guy from another team who's trying to make a name for himself, and maybe takes a shot at Kelsey, or takes a shot at Hurts, and knocks him out, for quite a while with an injury. I mean, that's the last thing you want. If you're going in these joint practices and you're going against the other team's starting cornerback, that they're working to get ready for the season, that they're going to be intense, but they're also not going to take cheap shots. They're not going to have any kind of dirty type of play trying to make a name for themselves. They're all trying to get ready for the season. So it's a different kind of intensity, as opposed to a game where you might get hurt by some third string guy who's just trying to make the team. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So this morning, again, we're talking to Martin Frank here, from the Delaware News Journal. You dropped this morning. I was looking at the article this morning when it dropped. You're 22 players fighting for roster spots, and at the top, the first thing that jumped out at me, don't laugh, was the fact that it published at 4:42 a.m. I hope you're not awake at 4:42 a.m. publishing an article.
No. That's kind of like set the night before and everything. I don't know who said it at 4:42, but I tell them that it's ready, and they decide on a time to make it go on.
I just noticed, because I was making sure I didn't miss the article yesterday, and I just wanted to make sure. But anyway, to backtrack to the Derek Barnett fight, not the fight itself, but in your article, he's one of those guys fighting for one of the last defensive end spots. And you mentioned during the fight, it was him and Jalen Carter lining up on the outside on that play. Derek Barnett, is he really fighting for a roster spot right now? Because you wouldn't really think that he'd be lining up, quote unquote, with those ones and with Jalen Carter if he's really that much on a roster bubble right now.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of an interesting case. Like, talent wise, he's good. I mean, still pretty good. He's coming off the ACL and everything, but like, he gets like so many dumb, like, personal foul type of penalties and stuff, and it just drives the coaches crazy. And you always kind of wonder, like, is there a point where they say, okay, enough's enough? So that's kind of like the reason I have him on the roster bubble. And also, like,
Can I ask a side point on that? Do you think some of
yeah,
those penalties and fouls, like to me, when I watched him play or in the past, I kind of feel like some of them are reputation calls. Do you think he gets this bad? Like, because some of the Colts reporters were saying he flat out punched Anthony Richardson. In my mind, I'm like, that's the reputation, not necessarily what's happening on the field.
yeah, I think there's some of that now. I mean, especially like he's been in the league since 2017, so he does have a history and everything. And there's always the famous clip of Sirianni during a game. I think it was the first year, 2021, where Barnett jumped off sides or whatever, and they threw the flag, and Sirianni was mouthing, "It's always him." So I mean, you can tell the coaches kind of get frustrated with him with stuff like that sometimes. And as good as he is, he was a first round pick in 2017. He is coming off the ACL surgery. And, a lot of those guys are rotating in and out. I mean, everyone makes a big deal about Carter getting all this time with the ones, but Barnett's been also working in with the ones. He's also with the twos. But, if you look at the defensive line position, obviously Hassan Reddick. I'm talking edge rusher. You got Reddick, you got Sweat, you got Nolan Smith, and you got BG. Those are four guys right there. So, like, you can kind of say there's a battle for that fifth spot. You have Barnett, and some of those other guys who are trying to make the roster. And it just depends on how they view it. I mean, you could always try to keep like a young guy as opposed to someone like Barnett. If you don't want to deal with the hassle of, at some point he's going to do something stupid and cost you 15 yards.
Going through, I mean, we only got a few minutes of your time. We could spend 3 hours dissecting your article and all the guys on the roster bubble. Which one of these bubble positions that you wrote about is the most intriguing, or the one that is actually the closest fight going on right now, which could go any way, even right through this weekend until roster cuts are on, I believe it's Tuesday?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I mean, the running back thing, I go back and forth with Trey Sermon and Boston Scott. I mean, everyone loves Boston Scott. He's been on the roster for 5 years. Is kind of like a long shot guy who just finds a way to stick. And, Trey Sermon's a guy who was a third round pick in 2021 from the 49ers. The Eagles picked him up, after roster cuts last year, and they kept him on the roster. And Sirianni, like, often unprompted, will mention how much he likes Sermon, but then you see the game last week. I mean, yes, he had the 33-yard touchdown run, but he also lost a fumble. So, it's kind of like it go back and forth. Yes, Sermon obviously has more potential and probably more talent than Boston Scott, but Boston Scott, like, doesn't hurt you with mistakes and stuff like that. So that's a good one. I love the cornerback battle. Obviously you have Slay and Bradbury, but all the other guys, fighting for that, backup role. Josh Jobe, I think, has pretty much set himself apart from the other guys as the third cornerback. I'm talking about on the outside, not in the slot. Right. So I mean, you got Eli Ricks, you got Mekhi Garner. Both those guys as undrafted free agents have played pretty well. I just think that's a really good battle. And obviously, wide receiver, you'd like to see one of those young guys stick, like, Joseph Nagata started off really strong, but he's kind of dropped off. I thought Tyree Cleveland would have made the team if he didn't get hurt last week and then put on IR. You got Devin Allen finally healthy after the Olympic hurdles and all. I mean, the trials and all that. So, that's a good battle. I mean, there are a lot of really good battles pretty much at every position. It's hard to pick just one, but yeah, there's some good ones. It's going to be some tough cuts, that's for sure.
When you brought up the running backs as your most intriguing, and you mentioned Boston Scott and Trey Sermon, like you would get a lot of Eagles fans that can't believe that Boston Scott's on the bubble and not Rashad Penny, because we've talked on this show with the viewers pretty much for the last 3 weeks that Rashad Penny's kind of in that bubble, but it kind of seems like in the last week or so that Rashad Penny's proven he's healthy and has kind of sort of locked himself into a roster spot at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I would think so. I mean, that was the big thing with Rashad Penny, like proving that he's healthy. And I've just seen like even in practice, even in the preseason games, I mean, he's like a straight ahead runner,
Mhm.
power runner that the Eagles don't really have. So I think really all Penny had to do was prove that he's healthy and that he can, he can pick up a lot of yards after contact, which I think kind of sets him apart more so from the other guys. I mean, especially Swift and Kenny Gainwell. I mean, when you're talking about the fourth guy, Trey Sermon or Boston Scott, I mean, whichever one of those guys makes the team, or maybe they keep five. I mean, it's possible both
Well,
can
I
make
was
it.
going to just say, the last 3 years they've only kept 3 running backs out of camp. Is there any scenario where they do? Because if they keep a fourth, then they've got to cut somewhere else, whether it's an extra
Yeah.
offensive lineman, defensive lineman, whatnot. Is there any chance it? I mean, literally the last 3 years he's kept 3. Is there any way
Yeah.
how he sticks to that? And 2 of these guys.
Um, I think so. I can kind of only see them keeping two tight ends. Obviously Goddard's one, and Jack Stahl probably because he's a really good blocker. So I think you can make up for it in that respect.
Mhm.
So yeah, I would think they'd keep four. I mean, I know they're 1 year they kept five. This was, I think, before.
Yeah, my
This
notes
might
only
have
go
been
back.
like,
My notes
yeah,
only go back to 2019, so I don't know if
yeah, yeah. So I mean, they've done that before. I mean, I think they're just going to go with four. In which
Mhm.
case, it'll be Sermon or Scott. But when you look at, I mean, they're going to be three main guys. It's going to be Swift, Penny, and Gainwell, and then
and whoever.
those are the ones you worry about. And Penny's kind of like your power back. The other two are more, your receiver out of the backfield type, although Swift can run, obviously. So it'll be a good rotation. And I think, a lot of people will ask me, like, how are they going to divvy up the carries? Is there going to be a number one guy? And I think personally, I think it depends week to week, like, who they're playing, what the matchup is, and who might have the hot hand. Like maybe they think, they're playing a team that's not as strong against the run, so they'll just like stick Penny in there and try to gain like 5 yards up the middle, or they might go with against a team that's pretty stout running and they'll hit them with Swift out of the backfield.
I'm so excited for hearing all the reports of the different two back sets and all the combinations with those guys and their creativity of the offense. I'm really excited for it. Real quick before I let you go, one final question that everybody loves talking about quarterbacks, and it's not Jalen Hurts the fun topic this offseason. It's Tanner McKee versus Marcus Mariota.
Yeah.
Um, Marcus Mariota is the quarterback two to start this season, correct? Can you tell
Yes.
everybody that I'm right in saying that?
Yes. For this season, yes, you are absolutely
For this
100%
season,
right.
right.
And I think the thing McKee proved, by his play, and what Eagles fans should be excited about is like next year, he could be the backup quarterback, and you don't have to go out and spend like $8 million on a Mariota type of guy. In which case, that's money you could distribute around the rest of the roster. So, I mean, that's the most important thing that McKee showed, but in his two games so far, and you're going to see a lot of them on Thursday night. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he starts,
Mhm.
plays like maybe the first 2.5 quarters, something like that, and then Ian Book finishes up. I don't think. Well, I mean, obviously Hertz isn't going to play, and I don't think Mariota is going to play either. So, Tanner McKee fans, Thursday night.
There are a lot of McKee truthers out there, and
Yeah.
it's been a fun battle on this show every single morning with the. I haven't come up with a nickname yet for the McKee truthers or anything like that yet. I gotta get creative with a nickname for those guys.
Yeah.
So again, we got Martin Frank, Delaware News Journal. I appreciate your time. What do you got? What are you going to do with all your free time now that there's no practices for you to cover?
There's still practices. We just, won't be able to see as much. So yeah, so after the game Thursday night, they're off Friday, and then they get back to like start preparing for the regular season on Saturday and everything. I mean, this is kind of like the period that they're going into now is like, getting ready for the season. Everything is, they're done evaluating. They have their 53, or they're going to have their 53 guys. So obviously over the weekend and into Monday, it'll be cutting down the roster. And then, once that's done on Tuesday, after that, everything's about preparing for the New England Patriots on September 10th. So,
Are you okay with the way they're doing all the cut downs at the same time versus spreading it out over the entirety of
yeah,
camp?
Yeah, I think teams love it because that last preseason game, you don't want any of your main guys to get hurt. So it's the perfect game to evaluate everyone on the roster. And if you're already down to 80 or 75, you might have to play some of your starters. And obviously, you don't want to do that because if these guys are already on the team, you don't want them getting hurt. I mean, it stinks for the fans because you're seeing a lot of guys that you never heard of, but for the teams, this is when they want to, get that final evaluation while keeping all their, top players pretty healthy and everything. So, yeah, I think it was inevitable that they would do that. Go from 90 to 53 all at once.
All right, that's cool. All right. Well, I greatly appreciate your time, Martin. Again, everybody, make sure you shoot Martin Frank a follow, Frank NFL on Twitter or X or whatever it's called. Delaware online.com for his articles. I greatly appreciate your time this morning, Martin.
All right, thanks. Yeah, thanks, Phil. I appreciate you having me. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you very much.
Do it again sometime.
Yeah, absolutely. You're always welcome. I tell it to all the beat guys. You're always welcome to kind of check my bad opinions on this show.
Yeah, no, they're not bad. You know what you're talking about. I like it.
All right. We have a great day, and yeah, we'll see. We'll see what you're right about the Eagles after this final preseason game.
All right.
All right. That was Martin Frank there on the I Have No Sponsor